On the eve of this new year, I turned 40, and my very first released game was published on Kongregate on June 1st, 2011, when I was 27. This effectively means that I've been developing games for a third of my life. Therefore, today I want to reflect on the path I've already taken and share some insights I've gained along the way. But first of all, let's face the truth that the career of an indie game developer looks really appealing to millions of aspiring programmers, artists, and game designers. I'm not exaggerating in the slightest when I say that millions of people dream of quitting their regular office jobs to become full-time game developers. 2 out of 4 most popular videos on my channel mention quote-unquote quitting job in their titles. So obviously, the idea of making money by pursuing the dream of creating games attracts hordes of developers. However, while we can easily find hundreds or even thousands of aspiring game developers sharing stories of putting together their first game or releasing their first project, the number of seasoned indie game creators who continue to work and share their experience for a long time is much lower. It might even create the impression that the indie game developer's career itself is not sustainable enough and that people choosing this path eventually burn out, lose their faith, and give up. That's why today I decided to recall my story, share some challenges and doubts I faced, and reflect on things that, in my opinion, can help you not only realize the dream of becoming an indie game developer, but also make it your sustainable profession that can provide you for living in the long term. Like many of you, I began dreaming about creating my own games during my school years. In my 10th grade at school, back in the previous millennium in 1999, my best friend and I attempted to develop a turn-based strategy game. Back then, we were captivated by playing Dune, The Battle for Arrakis, on the Sega console and aspired to create a similar game, but with more units, structures and weapons. We aimed to achieve this by utilizing the programming language called BASIC. During that time, there was no YouTube, no tutorials, and well, no internet for us. The only source of information on the programming language was the built-in help. It's no wonder that after a few months of development, when we encountered the dreaded Stack Overflow error and spent weeks trying to solve it, we eventually gave up and abandoned the game. After finishing school at the Zeros, I enrolled at the National University of Kyiv-Mohyla Academy. Although my specialty has nothing to do with programming or computer science, I managed to find some time to learn Flash and its built-in scripting language called ActionScript 2, and later ActionScript 3. Upon graduating with a master's in philology, I took on the role of an editor for a web magazine. However, while my primary responsibility involved writing articles, I also discovered ways to create animated flash banners for the web magazine. It was during this time that I revisited the long-buried and almost forgotten idea of creating video games. My first ever finished game, called Match Insanity, was an attempt to create a game about matches, inspired by a real-world game I used to play with my friends. I completed it in late 2010, and as it was extremely basic and simple, I didn't release or show it to anybody. However, this game is what gave me the strongest boost as a developer, taught me how to program and put together different mechanics and systems in Flash. Only about a year later, in August 2011, did I decide to create actual graphics, polish it, give it another name, Don't Eat Last Berry, and release it on Kongregate. My second game, Turtle Dreams to Fly, was actually released earlier than my first one, in June 2011. But more importantly, it was the first game that earned me some money and helped me to realize that solo game development could turn into a sustainable full-time profession. I don't want to spend too much time in this video describing multiple ways and all the nuances of making money by publishing Flash games back in those times, but you can find all the information in other videos on this channel, as I've already published the detailed story on each and every game I've created. You'll find links to them in the description down below. Also, Don't forget to give a like and subscribe to this channel if you want more videos just like this. My third game, When I Was Young, was created at the beginning of 2012 as a one-week contest project and even won third place. I spent another few weeks polishing the game and preparing it for sale. Overall, it was probably one of my most successful projects made in such a short time. I took part in the next iterations of the same Game Jam contest twice more, with my games Frogged and The Choice. However, neither of them reached the same level of profits and success as When I Was Young did. Tired of these smaller projects, I embarked on the journey of creating a bigger game called Symbiosis. In fact, I started working on it back in August 2011 after the release of the Don't Eat Last Berry game, and it took me more than a whole year to develop. As you might remember, back then I was still working as an editor in the web magazine, and game development was more like a hobby than an actual profession for me. But obviously, I was constantly dreaming of becoming a full-time indie game developer. So, I made myself a promise to quit the job if I managed to earn more from the Symbiosis game than I earned in my daily office job. Luckily, that's exactly what happened. After the release of Symbiosis in December 2012, I finally quit my office job to become a full-time indie game developer. So, it effectively took 4 games to make my dream come true. Was I happy? Absolutely. But the real journey has just begun. Following the apparent success of the Symbiosis game, I quickly put together a sequel titled Symbiosis Greenland. It only took me 3 months, and it was published in July 2013. After that, and another small contest project I mentioned earlier, I finally conceived the idea for my biggest and most time-consuming game, Get a Little Gold. I began working on it at the end of 2013, and it took me a solid 3 years to bring it to release. Along the way, I became a father, bringing a lot of happiness but also more challenges into my life. Get a Little Gold was eventually released in October 2016, about a year and a half later than I initially planned. Moreover, while I was immersed in developing the game and caring for my newborn daughter, the market for Flash games went through a complete transformation. When I finished the game and attempted to sell it to a sponsor as I typically did, I discovered that nobody was interested in buying my game. Faced with this situation, I had no choice but to make the tough decision to publish Get a Little Gold all by myself. It was genuinely intimidating as I had never done it before and didn't even know what to expect. Nevertheless, as I mentioned, I had no other option. I implemented in-app purchases into the game and continued releasing multiple fixes, content updates and extensions. Over the course of 4 years, from the initial release until the end of 2020, I rolled out 40 game updates, almost 1 update every month throughout the game's lifetime. Get a Little Gold became a massive success, thriving and gaining more and more devoted players. The overall number of plays on Kongregate alone surpassed 2 million. However, at the end of 2020, another disaster struck when the Flash technology was completely discontinued, making it impossible to run the game in browsers, and effectively marking the death of Flash version of Get a Little Gold. After the Flash's end of life, I made the decision to switch to Unity, a completely new game engine for me, and to port the entire game for mobile devices. I understood that the game, which took almost 7 years to develop and evolve, couldn't be transferred to the new game engine in the blink of an eye. This was especially true considering both the scope of the game itself and the fact that I didn't know Unity's C# programming language back then. So I hope to accomplish this task in about 2 years. And obviously it should have already been ported by now if another quote-unquote perfect storm hadn't hit me and my country at the beginning of 2022. After Russia invaded my country in February 2022, I found myself with no motivation or mental energy to continue working on the Get a Little Gold game. Instead, After a month of complete anxiety and shock, hiding from missiles in the basement of my home with my wife and daughter, I decided to channel my efforts into creating another project dedicated to the heroic resistance of the Ukrainian people against the genocidal Russian attempt to destroy our whole nation. Therefore, the actual first game I created using the Unity game engine was an idle incremental game called Orgs. I completed it in a few months and released it in the summer of 2022 as a browser-based web game on orgs.com. Later on, I also published a mobile version of the game for iOS and Android. Orgs garnered multiple positive reviews and maintained a 5-star rating on the Google Play Store until July 2023, when the game was suddenly suspended on mobile stores due to the so-called hate speech policy. I released a detailed video about Org suspension, so if you want to learn more about it, feel free to check the link in the description. So, that wraps up the 13 years long journey of my game development career. After the suspension of Org's game, I dove back into the development of Get a Little Gold, and I'm currently on the verge of publishing a test version for mobiles. If you are interested in becoming one of the testers, join the game's Discord server. I'll drop the link in the description. As you can see, my full-time indie game development journey is genuinely exciting, packed with highs and lows, occasionally exhausting, but never dull or boring. If you are considering taking a similar plunge, good luck to you. I hope you enjoy it. For now though, thank you for sticking around until the end, have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you in the next video.